We're at Vincent Corporation. It is the 24th of February 2017. We're getting ready to test in the screw press some Kale. And this is the test area where we have a large number of screw presses. We have smaller presses over here, shredders, presses, and we've got one set up. Hey, we got everybody playing over here right now. And Tyler playing with the VFD, and Jason playing with his thing, and Junior and Elizabeth and Carlos. Here's a neat press. It's a little CP4 press. Normally has a 1.5 horsepower motor. Well, we've got some really tough polymer. We're going to squeeze solvent out of guayulus polymer and getting the solvent out of it. Anyway, we put a 7.5 horsepower motor on this poor little press. The motor weighs more than the rest of the press. But that's something else for another day, next week. And we're getting to run Kale now. This is Kale, in case you didn't know what it was. We tasted it. It tastes exactly like lawn clippings if you mowed your grass. People put lemon on it, and you get it in restaurants. And here's the inlet of our screw press. You can see the screw going around. Fairly low hertz, slow speed. And we're trying to run this in a 6-inch press without shredding it. If we were going a lot faster, it would have probably worked better. And we're just starting to feed this material into the screen area of the press. It's got a wedge wire screen and rotating cone option. You can see that cone's turning. That's the discharge door. A couple of pins going around there. That one and that one. They go on. They engage in this collar on the end to make the cone rotate. That'll strip the cake away. And everybody's doing stuff. Okay, I stepped in and cranked it up to 120 hertz. Get bored to death watching it otherwise. It was running at 40 hertz, so we tripled the speed. And we're starting, kale juice. We're making kale juice. It's coming out. When you first start up a press, the material that comes out will have been conveyed through without any squeezing. So the first stuff out will always be very wet. This is already drying up. We ran a little liquid down when we started up. Cone's barely opening, so it's coming out. And we're feeding it in fairly rapidly. We're going to run a capacity test. Okay, we just switched buckets and started a time trial. We're 13 seconds into a time trial, collecting press liquor in that blue bucket back there. Keeping the press loaded. We are running high speed because of the low bulk density. Liquid coming out predominantly on the other side because the resistor teeth are on the top. And we're making kale juice. The results of this test will get our percent yield. That is what percent of the kale comes out as juice and what percent comes out as pressed cake. Here's the kale we're squeezing. We picked it up at the market this morning. I see Harley came over to watch the testing. He's really here to guard the chickens. Okay, well, the kids are all busy running a test. See what happens when you give kale to the chickens. Do they come eat that kale? Well, there's a hen. She's approaching. They're not enthused with kale. If I'd thrown some corn out there, some of the other stuff we press, they come running. They like our test usually, but they don't go for kale. Walk right over it. We're 3.5 minutes into this test, 3:40 minutes 40 seconds. You know, if you took this stuff and soaked it in alcohol, the soluble solids would diffuse into the alcohol. And then if you put that into the screw press and squeeze out alcohol, you need an explosion-proof motor, but and then you'd have to recover from the alcohol whatever it is in the juice that you're after. The trick to running a test like this is to keep the press full all the time and to don't monkey with the RPM of the screw or the air pressure on the discharge cone. So we're holding constant air pressure in there on the discharge, and we're holding steady RPM at high speed because of the low bulk density. Here's the juice coming through the screen. There's 3 stages of compression, and it's coming mostly a bit from the second, mostly from the 3rd stage of compression. That's because of all the air that's being squeezed out in the first part. Not a whole lot of fiber here. Coming out of the screen, it's pretty wet. If I take this press cake, fistful of it, and squeeze it, this stuff would be worth pressing again. There's a lot of free juice left in this material. I squeezed that out of that. So we'll probably try a double pressing here. One possible way of avoiding the need for double pressing is to shred this material before you put it in the screw press. We're hoping to come up with something where the second machine, a shredder, would not be required. This is the material that we took out in first pressing, first trial, where we were still running at 40 hertz, very relatively slow. If I take this and squeeze it, I've got the same problem. It's shredded, but we haven't been able to squeeze all the juice out. So it isn't a matter of running real slow to get the high yield. It's a matter of getting it shredded and compacted down. This is what we got in 12.5 minutes of testing. We're going to weigh it and get the flow rate, % yield. Then we'll run this cake again through the press to show what happens on the second pressing. Okay, this is second pressing. We're pressing the press cake from our first pressing. Go ahead and throw it in. Trick is keep the right-hand side screw submerged all the time. That way you know you're feeding a constant rate. You can see how much slower the screw is going now. We're down to 6 1/2 RPM. Notice that we're now getting some liquid, some action clear back here, whereas previously the only action was down here at the very end. This is the liquid we're getting out. Looks to me like we're getting out more liquid than we were the first time. We're definitely getting out more press cake than we got the first time around. And that's on top of increasing the air pressure in this air cylinder. We went from, I think, about 12 psi. We're running at 30 psi right now to get higher juice yield. So this is what I hope for. If I catch some of this in my hand and try squeezing this one, that drop was from the previous test, and now I've gotten the yield out of this stuff. My hand's barely moist. There was no film. I don't see a film between my fingers. We're squeezing the heck out of it now. Preliminary results on the first pressing, we got about 25% came out as liquid, and we were running about 120 pounds per hour. When we took that press cake and ran it through again, we got 35% juice yield out of that press cake, and we were running at about 200 pounds per hour. Those are mentally calculated numbers, so actual lab tests when we run mass balance will be better. We've just run some Kale, so we've got our samples. The next thing we're going to run over here doesn't look as promising. This was described to us as being potato peel and ash, and it's may or may not work, but we got a whole crew of people. Oh my goodness, they're already pouring it into the press. They're still running very slow on this press, 6.5 RPM in a KP6 6-inch press. It's got a wedge wire screen. Oh, they're getting out liquid. It looks like solids are coming through the liquid. And this green stuff is all Kale. You can count that as a marker. I see we've opened up the cone. We'll see if we get enough to push it open. We need to cut the air pressure down to about 12 psi. Okay, here we are. The liquid's coming out pretty clean. If I get it in my hand, I don't have a lot of particles there, and we're feeding it in the press. A little bit of churning action. Yeah, you guys cleaned up a little bit. And but that's a good flow of press liquor. We're still getting Kale to come out of the press. We haven't gotten down to the point where the potato peel will come out as a press cake. Yeah, Okay, we're catching the press liquor. The flow of press cake is negligible, but we'll get how many gallons per minute the press can take. And notice we're now starting to get out some potato peel press cake. So the press is making cake. It's coming out probably reasonably dry, and we're getting a lot of liquid separation. Okay, I'm recorded. Okay, recording. Yeah, we're still squeezing liquid out of the press cake, but not a whole lot. Okie doke. Anyway, the cake's coming out nicely.
I think I'm going to try to grab a baggie.
This is the screw department where we make screws, and we got screws all over. We buy flights, see these flights to make screws. Anyway, this is the screw department on a Friday afternoon just before everybody goes home. This is the assembly department. There's a frame of a press where we're laying out the plates that will be welded in this frame. Here's another where they've already welded in the frames. Here's a small press like we've been using, sort of an oddball arrangement up there. Something else. There's one back there going together. Then these are presses waiting to be put together. These two, this one and this one, have to ship in March. And here's another one where we're getting ready to start welding more stuff to it. So, and there's a little baby. Here's the screen raw material for making screens for one series of press where you have a one-piece screen. And over here I see a press. You can see, imagine the screw, and that is there's these teeth that stick down in there to stir up the flow. So I've got 5 stages of compression. I feed here, 1 stage of compression, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Each one a little tighter than the other. The teeth are shorter because the shaft is conical in shape, and so we have to have short teeth at the discharge or they would hit the shaft. This dog is feral. I'll bet he runs if I walk towards him. He won't let you get near him. He hangs out, or he helps guard the chickens, we hope, but boy, he won't let anybody get near him.